Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie McGrath, senior editor at Forbes. Some 200 million Americans have been affected by the winter storm this weekend and continuing Arctic cold. Joining us to explain what is going on with the weather in this country is Bill Wadell. He's a reporter for AccuWeather and he is reporting from Statesville, North Carolina. Bill, thanks for coming to us from out in the cold.
Absolutely, yeah. And the cold, and we are dealing with a lot of ice and still some slippery roads here in the Carolinas after the storm.
So New York got slammed, the Northeast got slammed, but so
Mhm.
did the South. Take us to the effects of this storm. What do we know right now, and how much more is coming? Because I've heard some early forecasts that this is just the start of a potentially troubling weather pattern.
Yeah, absolutely. AccuWeather expert meteorologist telling people this is going to be a tough and challenging week for a lot of people, especially along the southern side of this winter storm in the ice zone. Here in the Carolinas, again, we're dealing with an inch plus in some areas of sleet and ice, and then you had freezing rain on top of it. That's really hard to clear that off of the roads. Not as easy. Oftentimes, it's just plowing a lighter, dry snow. The big concern over the next few days, some of the coldest air so far this winter is going to be surging in across parts of the central and eastern United States. So we are talking about hundreds of thousands of people who are without power, without heat, and even in some southern states, they are going to be dealing with sub freezing temperatures at night. And that is going to be a big safety concern. We know that during these extended power outages in the cold, people turn to emergency generators. Sometimes they turn to grills and other unsafe alternative heating measures. So even though this storm now is long gone, there are potentially life threatening concerns over the next few days with people simply trying to keep their families warm since they may be without power and heat for a few more days in the hardest hit areas of the ice storm.
Do you mind, Bill, explaining for us what you've seen on the ground? You're in North Carolina right now. You were in South Carolina. You just described the fact that the South could be facing sub freezing temperatures, turning to things like grills. There's an inch worth of snow and sleet or ice and sleet on the ground. What else have you seen as you've traveled the country this day?
It's been an interesting journey. We actually started based down in Atlanta, Georgia. That's where we were for the bulk of this winter storm over the weekend. So while we were in downtown Atlanta, it was freezing rain. So for the most part, the highways and the main roads were just wet. But when it came to concrete sidewalks and especially anything metal, so parked cars and those drainage grates along sidewalks and along the roads, those quickly turned into a sheet of ice. So there were definitely a lot of slippery spots in Atlanta. We were actually down at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta, one of the busiest in the world. And we were talking with people before the storm, scrambling to rebook their flights, trying to get out of town before the ice storm. And with so many thousands of flights canceled across the country, those ripple effects have been felt well beyond the United States, even impacting international travel. So in Atlanta, we were dealing with freezing rain, but for the most part, the roads really weren't that bad, thankfully. A 45-minute drive northeast of Atlanta, that's where we went later on the day when the storm was happening. We had sleet, we had ice and freezing rain on the roads, a lot of slippery spots. So we saw cars that had spun out, a number of crashes. So a big difference just within less than an hour drive out of Atlanta. So we had made the drive from Atlanta through the Carolinas. Now we're north of Charlotte, where we're seeing more of that ice. And what's interesting now is temperatures in parts of this region going above freezing during the day. Of course, we've got the sun out and beautiful clear blue skies. So we have ice and snow that's melting. Temperatures are going to plummet overnight. So we're going to have that freeze thaw cycle over the next few days. So families digging out, the crews clearing of the roads, they're going to make progress during the day. And then things that melt, those spots can potentially refreeze at night. So the next few mornings, we're going to be dealing with a lot of slippery spots. And it just makes it tough for the utility crews and people to get this all cleaned up.
Indeed, there are, as you said, hundreds of thousands of energy customers without power throughout the areas that got hit by the storm. And we were talking right before we started recording. I'm in New York. You started in Atlanta. You went through the Carolinas. Just how many states have been affected by this weather system?
Yeah, more than 24 states have been impacted by the freezing rain, the ice, and the snow. Even more than that, when it comes to this Arctic blast with this surge of very cold air moving in. So, a lot of people impacted. We're being told, we know, we don't need to speak with the experts. We know that the heating bills are going to be very expensive for people next time they open the mail. And they're checking their heating bills over the past few weeks because of this cold stretch that we're going to be dealing with. The economic impacts from this winter storm truly are staggering. AccuWeather experts estimate that the total damage and economic loss from this winter storm at 105 billion to 115 billion dollars. I mean, think about it. We have so many businesses that have shut down for several days. We have those critical commerce, delivery, and the supply chain hubs in the Midwest, in the Ohio Valley, in Louisville. So many of those impacted in different areas in different ways where businesses have just been shut down. People have been at home, not working. And again, with these extended power outages, there is the risk over the next few days of pipes bursting in homes, in apartments, in mobile homes. So again, the freezing rain, snow, and ice pretty much long gone, but these impacts could linger for the next few days.
So north of $100 billion of economic damage so far, but with the cold air that's coming, that number sounds like it could grow. I know you're not surrounded by the screens that you have at AccuWeather HQ, but can you give us a sense of which parts of the country are under warning for that Arctic blast, for that cold air that's coming in the coming days?
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about the Midwest and that cold air getting all the way to some parts of the Gulf Coast states this week. Of course, the Northeast already feeling the cold, and New York City is going to be dealing with a very long, I believe we're now at 14-day stretch below sub-freezing temperatures in the forecast. So we're looking at a top five or top 10 ranking of just how cold this prolonged stretch of Arctic air is going to be impacting the New York City area. But they're feeling the chill in the Southeast down to the Gulf Coast. We don't want to, people are dealing with enough right now. And when they're seeing the headlines and checking the forecast, you're going to start to see some headlines this week of the potential of a coastal storm this weekend with winter storm impacts that could impact parts of the East Coast. So, again, very early to be talking about this, but we're trying to put this on people's radar because there is the potential of a high impact storm, potentially back to back weekends. And this could be impacting a lot of people who haven't even had a chance to fully clean up and recover from all of this ice and all of this snow. So that's why we're telling people when the sun is up, when things are melting, if you can, get the shoveling, get things cleaned up, make sure your home is in good shape because potentially we may be dealing with another round of high impact winter weather this coming weekend.
When you say high impact, do you mean wind, ice, snow, all of the above?
Potentially, that's what we're looking at. We are still several days out. This is a complex system that AccuWeather expert meteorologists are looking at. There are different scenarios, so in no way, shape, or form is this a slam dunk forecast just yet. This is going to evolve over the next few days, but potentially we could see some big impacts. Listening to the meteorologists at the AccuWeather Global Weather Center on a meeting just a short time ago, the word potential blizzard conditions have been discussed. So again, that is not locked in. I can't tell you specifically just yet what regions we're looking at for that, but there is the possibility with this Arctic air, with this storm system, that some parts of the east coast of the U.S. could see some very disruptive winter weather this weekend.
Potential being the operative word. So I
Yep.
imagine the AccuWeather recommendation is to listen to local officials. And kind of on that note, I wanted to ask you, Bill, local officials across several states are reporting deaths that seem to be attributable to this winter storm. What's your sense of how many people's lives and health have been taken or affected by what we've experienced so far and what could be coming down the pipe?
Yeah. That's a tough question to answer because in these circumstances, with so many places affected, it's tough to get those solid numbers. When you look at the population area for the impacts over the past few days, more than 200 million people, and this is including multiple major metro areas. I can tell you firsthand, being in Atlanta during this winter storm, we saw unhoused people that were out in freezing rain. We know that there were unhoused people out there dealing with these elements and the bitter cold. And that's just one of the factors, right? So oftentimes it's really hard to get an accurate estimate of really how many people are injured or killed in these extreme weather events. We get those numbers sometimes coming in from counties and states, um, but there are compounding effects, and we may not have a true look at that number for several more days simply because the cold impacts are going to be getting worse over the next few days. So there's going to be that increased risk of hypothermia.
As we're talking, I'm wondering how this stretch of weather compares to past winters. North of $100 billion of economic impact so far, some 13 people who have died, 200 million people affected by the snow and or cold and or ice across the country. This feels remarkable, at least within the last few years. How is AccuWeather characterizing where this storm and this weather system kind of falls within the history of winter storms?
Yes, our team has been saying this is the most impactful winter storm for many places in at least the past 5 or 10 years. For some communities that have been impacted, they haven't seen a storm like this for quite some time. So this is definitely high up there. And it's the factor that we had a large storm impacting dozens of states all at the same time, followed by a week of extreme cold. And now you factor in the potential of another winter storm coming up within the next few days. So that's how we're looking at this. As you said, it's not just the one storm we're talking about. It's a storm, extreme cold, and that combination of another potential storm behind it. And as you said, what's so interesting about our total damage and economic loss estimates, typically they peak during the summer and fall months during hurricane and wildfire season when we see our most costly U.S. weather disasters. But that was not the case in 2025. The most expensive weather disasters happened toward the beginning of the year and then toward the very end of the year. Because remember, in 2025, we did not have any U.S. landfalling hurricanes. Last January, we had a historic winter storm in the Gulf Coast. You may remember that we had snow and ice all the way to the Florida Panhandle and some of those beaches. So, for parts of the Southeast, this is the second January in a row where they have been seeing a multi-billion-dollar winter weather storm. It just goes to show, as AccuWeather meteorologists have been telling people for years now, we are seeing this trend of extreme weather impacts in the United States, and they can happen in different ways and at different times of the year.
And would it be fair to say that this trend of extreme weather impacts is due to climate change?
Yeah, that's the question that we get all the time. And it is tough to answer those questions in real time or in the days right after an event because it takes an analysis, it takes the data. Um, but our team has been very clear with this trend line that they are seeing these impacts of amplified jet streams, of more extreme events happening more frequently. And again, we have more people living in high risk, vulnerable areas. So it is a combination that we're just seeing this trend, not just of extreme weather impacts, but ebbs and flows, right? Sometimes we'll have these stretches of back-to-back severe weather storms, and then we'll go weeks or months on end. I mean, look at this past summer and fall where we didn't have a single hurricane making landfall in the U.S. That's the first time that's happened in 10 years. So when it comes to climate change, yes, we are seeing more impacts. And one of the ways it's been described to me and with our team that we're talking with at the operations center is that it comes in these ebbs and flows. And it's not always what people expect. Impacts from climate change and highly variable weather, it impacts people in different ways. And our team actually put out a climate study a few weeks ago that found we're seeing more intense extreme rainfall rates, yet at the same time across the United States, the overall average precipitation has gone down a little bit.
Mm.
So we're seeing all of these different factors in recent years with extreme weather. A lot of this is still being studied. At the end of the day, what does this mean? People need to take weather seriously, and especially when it comes to insurance and preparedness. We just want people to be prepared and to respect weather because highly impactful and very expensive for a lot of people right now.
And speaking of, with the coming cold, when do you think a more precise forecast will be out? Should folks check back in on Wednesday, on Thursday? What's the AccuWeather recommendation here?
Absolutely. We're telling people to check the AccuWeather app every day. By Wednesday or Thursday, we're going to have much more confidence on this potential for another winter storm over the weekend. But the confidence is there right now when it comes to extreme cold this week impacting hundreds of millions of people. There's no doubt about that. If people think it's cold now, just wait. In many areas, it will be getting colder later this week. The AccuWeather real field temperature is expected to drop to 30 to 60 degrees below zero in parts of the Midwest at times this week.
If you think it's cold now, it's about to get colder. Bill Wadell reporting for AccuWeather from North Carolina. Thank you so much for joining us from the field and providing us with your insights. We so appreciate your time.
Of course, thank you for having us and everybody impacted by this winter storm. We're thinking of you, so please take care.